Have you ever found yourself navigating a public space, maybe a bustling market, a new office building, or even just your local park, and suddenly you encounter something that just um, doesn't work?
Yeah, like a set of stairs where you instinctively expected a ramp.
Exactly. Or a door that's so heavy it feels like it's designed to keep people out. It's in those moments that you realize not everyone experiences the built environment in the same way.
Hmm.
What if the very design of our world, unintentionally or not, actively prevented millions of people from fully participating in daily life? That's a pretty heavy thought, isn't it?
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Indeed. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a foundational piece of legislation designed to dismantle those barriers, an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring certain buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, yeah, but most people know it as Batas Pambansa Bilang 344, or just BP 344.
Right, BP 344.
And more specifically, we're exploring its implementing rules and regulations, the IRR. These are basically the detailed blueprints that dictate how this act is actually put into practice.
Okay, so the IRR is the how-to guide.
Pretty much. And this isn't just about understanding legal jargon. It's about grasping how a single law can profoundly shape the physical world around us, and crucially, why that matters for millions.
That's our mission today. We're cutting through the complexity of these dense IRR documents specifically. We're looking at excerpts from BP344.pdf and BP344IRR.pdf to really pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight.
Think of it as a shortcut.
Exactly, your shortcut to being truly well-informed on this critical topic. A quick note, though. While we have two source documents, that second one, BP344IRR0.pdf, well, parts of it are a bit tough to read. The scan quality isn't perfect.
Yeah, some legibility issues there.
So our primary focus will be on the clear content that's readily understandable from both, just to make sure you get the clearest picture possible.
And the scope of this deep dive becomes even more impactful when you consider the numbers. Our sources highlight a pretty striking data point.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
As of June 17th, 2025, there are 2,235,406 registered persons with disabilities.
Wow. Over 2.2 million.
Exactly. This isn't just a statistic. It represents a significant portion of the population. For them, accessibility isn't a mere convenience. It's a fundamental right to participate fully in society.
That sheer volume really underscores the need for this kind of legislation.
Absolutely. It underscores the broad impact and the absolute necessity of such comprehensive legislation. It's about ensuring a world where everyone can move freely and engage fully.
That number alone truly puts the scope of this deep dive into perspective. It's definitely not a niche issue. It affects a massive segment of our community. So let's start with the fundamental objective of BP 344. Why was this act put in place? What was the driving force behind it?
Well, the stated purpose from Rule 1, Section 1 of the IRR is quite clear on that. It's to provide minimum requirements and standards to make buildings, facilities, and utilities for public use accessible to disabled persons.
Minimum requirements. That phrasing seems important.
It is. What's fascinating here is that emphasis on minimum. This isn't about setting some pie-in-the-sky ideal necessarily.
It's a baseline.
Exactly. It's about establishing a universal baseline, a non-negotiable floor for accessibility. It ensures that essential access is guaranteed for everyone.
But it doesn't stop places from doing more.
Precisely. It doesn't preclude or discourage facilities from exceeding these standards for even greater inclusivity. It's really about establishing that foundational level of access, ensuring no one is completely excluded from public spaces and services.
It really pushes us to rethink public spaces, not just as places for some people, but as environments built for everyone.
That's the core idea.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just about setting technical specifications, right? Our sources explicitly link the philosophical principles behind this act to broader goals adopted by the United Nations.
That's right. The IRR directly aligns itself with the UN goal of full participation and enjoyment of the environment for all people, regardless of disability.
So, what are these underlying principles that truly guide BP 344?
Okay, so to achieve this UN goal, Rule 2, Section 1.3 outlines 6 basic physical planning requirements. These are really the pillars.
Let's hear them.
First is accessibility. This means the built environment must be designed to be accessible to all people. Critically, it ensures no criteria impede use by either disabled or non-disabled citizens.
So, universal design is baked in from the start, not separate, but equal facilities.
Exactly. It directly challenges that old idea, strongly advocating for universal design.
Okay, what's number two?
The second principle is reachability. This demands provisions to make as many places or buildings as possible reachable by everyone.
So it's not just about the destination building being accessible.
Right. It moves beyond isolated accessible points towards creating a more interconnected, accessible network. It suggests a continuous effort to expand accessible areas, making the entire journey to a place just as important as the destination itself.
Gotcha. The whole experience, doorstep to destination. What's third?
Third, usability.
Yeah.
The built environment is designed so that all persons, whether disabled or not, may use and enjoy it.
Use and enjoy. So beyond just getting in the door.
Precisely. This goes beyond mere physical access. It's about practical, functional utility. For a space to be truly usable, it means someone using a wheelchair can not only enter a restroom, for example, but can also navigate within it, reach the fixtures, and use them comfortably. It's about practical, everyday functionality.
When you talk about usability, it makes me think it's not enough to just get in the door. You have to be able to do things once you're inside. Is that the core idea here? And perhaps you could give us an example?
That's the core idea exactly. Think of, say, a public counter at a service center.
Okay.
An accessible design means the counter is low enough for someone in a wheelchair to interact easily, but also, crucially, has clear space underneath for knees and feet.
Ah, right, the knee space.
Yeah, it's about designing for the interaction, not just allowing physical presence. Okay, the fourth principle is orientation.
Making your way around.
Exactly. Making it easy for everyone to find their way inside and outside buildings or open spaces. This involves clear, intuitive signage, logical pathways, layouts that minimize confusion.
Which helps everyone, really.
Absolutely. It's crucial for individuals with visual impairments or cognitive disabilities, sure, but it's beneficial for all. Think of a sprawling airport. Terminal clear orientation benefits everyone rushing to a gate.
Good point. What's next?
Fifth is safety. Designing for safety ensures that people can move about with fewer hazards to life and health.
Okay, so things like
non-slip surfaces, adequate lighting, and importantly, emergency exits that are accessible to all.
the idea that safety is intertwined with accessibility, not a separate consideration. It's not just about preventing falls, but about ensuring that emergency procedures are viable for everyone. How challenging is that to implement in practice?
Oh, it can be quite challenging, especially retrofitting older structures.
Right.
But it's paramount. For instance, an emergency exit can't simply be a fire escape stairway if a building is regularly used by wheelchair users.
Right, that wouldn't work.
No, it must include accessible routes like fire-rated ramps or maybe specialized evacuation elevators. This requires integrated thinking right from the beginning of the design process.
Makes sense. And the last principle.
And finally, the sixth principle is workability and efficiency. The built environment is designed to allow disabled citizens to participate and contribute to developmental goals.
Ah, so connecting accessibility to economic and social participation.
Precisely. This principle broadens the scope beyond just public access to include economic and social contribution. It emphasizes the societal value of inclusion. When we design spaces that facilitate work and engagement, well, we unlock potential for millions.
That's powerful.
These 6 principles, taken together, they form a truly robust framework. They help us understand the spirit of the law, ensuring design choices foster genuine, practical participation and equal opportunity for everyone.
That provides a really solid framework for understanding the why behind it all. Now let's move from the abstract to the specific. Who exactly is covered by these regulations? Our sources categorize disabled persons. Could you break those down for us and maybe touch on how each category informs the actual design features?
Certainly. Rule 2, Section 1.1 outlines 5 categories of disabled persons, and these classifications are crucial because they dictate the varied measures needed for an accessible environment. It's not one size fits all.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, we have those with impairments requiring confinement to wheelchairs. This category directly implies the foundational need for features we often think of first.
Like ramps and elevators.
Exactly. Ramps with specific slopes, elevators, wider doorways, and ample turning spaces. The IRR even specifies a 1.50-meter diameter circle as a guide for planning wheelchair turning spaces.
Wow, that's specific. So the wheelchair user is a primary consideration for many of the physical specifications.
Indeed, they are central to many of the dimensional requirements. Second are those with impairments causing difficulty or insecurity in walking or climbing stairs, or requiring the use of braces, crutches, or other artificial supports, or impairments caused by amputation, arthritis, spastic conditions, or pulmonary, cardiac, or other ills, rendering individuals semi-ambulatory.
Okay, that's a broad group. What does that mean for design?
For this group, the focus shifts to measures that support stability and reduce physical strain. We're looking at things like continuous handrails, really important on stairs and in corridors.
Mm-hmm.
Wider corridors, too, to comfortably accommodate walking aids, and appropriate non-skid floor finishes to prevent slips and falls.
That sounds like the law is considering a whole spectrum of mobility challenges, not just full wheelchair use.
Exactly. It's about creating environments that support a range of mobility needs. Third, we have individuals with total or partial impairments of hearing or sight, causing insecurity or likelihood of exposure to danger in public places.
Okay, so moving beyond just physical mobility now.
Right. This focuses on features that proactively prevent danger. Think about audio-visual aids at pedestrian crossings.
So not just a visual walk signal, but a sound cue, too.
Precisely. For those with visual impairments, also clear, bold signage that is easy to read, maybe even with tactile elements.
That broadens the definition significantly. What's the fourth category?
It does. Fourth are impairments due to conditions of aging and incoordination. This classification is particularly insightful, I think,
How so?
because it broadens the scope beyond traditional disability definitions. It emphasizes that accessibility features like those handrails we mentioned, or clear pathways, benefit not just people with specific diagnosed disabilities.
Lots of other people, too.
Exactly. The elderly, pregnant individuals, even parents pushing strollers. It aligns perfectly with that concept of universal design, where designing for the most challenged users often benefits everyone.
A truly inclusive approach. And the fifth category.
Finally, mental impairments, whether acquired or congenital in nature. Now, the direct implications for physical design might seem less obvious compared to, say, needing a ramp.
Yeah.
But this category highlights the need for intuitive orientation and safety in public spaces. This might manifest as simplified layouts, consistent signage, maybe minimizing sensory overload.
Things that reduce confusion or anxiety.
Right. Ensuring ease of navigation and a sense of security for everyone. It underscores that accessibility isn't just about physical barriers, but also cognitive and sensory ones. So when you look at these categories together,
Yeah.
you can see how they don't just list types of disability, but they actively inform and necessitate diverse design choices. It leads to a comprehensive approach, not a narrow, one-size-fits-all solution. Each category illuminates a different facet of what makes an environment truly accessible.
It's clear that the law is very specific about who it's for. Now let's shift focus to the breadth of its reach. Where does BP 344 truly apply? What's the scope?
Okay, Rule 1, Section 3 details the specific scope. First, it applies to public and private buildings and related structures for public use.
Both public and private.
Yes, and this is a crucial detail. It includes newly constructed, repaired, or renovated structures.
So not just new builds, renovations too.
Exactly. This means the law isn't just for future development. It actively mandates improvements to existing infrastructure when significant work is done. So if a building undergoes a major overhaul, it needs to incorporate these features.
That's a critical point for older structures, ensuring they catch up over time.
Precisely. Second, it applies to streets and highways. This includes requirements for features like cutout curbs and accessible ramps at sidewalks.
The curb cuts we see everywhere now.
Right. And audiovisual aids for pedestrian crossings. However, there's a practical exception noted in the source.
Okay.
Requirements for accessibility at pedestrian-grade separations, think overpasses and underpasses, may be waived.
Why is that?
Well, it acknowledges that while ideal, full accessibility might not always be structurally or, practically feasible for certain existing complex infrastructure like that, it's an example of the law balancing ideals with practical limitations.
That's a good example of that balance. What about public transportation? Is that covered?
Oh, yes. Public utilities are definitely covered, specifically public transport vehicles. This includes passenger buses and jeepneys.
The backbone of commuting for many.
Absolutely. Passenger trains, like the LRTA, domestic inter-island vessels, so ferries and ships, and even domestic aircraft of air carriers. It's quite comprehensive.
Wow, okay.
And then there are specific rules for public telephones. The IRR states that at least 1 unit of public telephones for every four units shall be accessible to disabled persons
1 in 4.
and shall be provided with visual aids required. provided that if only one public telephone is to be installed in a particular place, the same shall be accessible to disabled persons.
That's a very specific, actionable requirement, even for something we see less of now, but still important for basic access.
It is. It ensures basic communication access isn't overlooked. Finally, public transport terminals, including those of LRTA, are covered. And the important note here is that the building accessibility criteria apply to these terminals as well.
Ah, so the same rules for buildings apply to the terminals.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it means the entire journey from the street into a terminal, onto a vehicle, and then into a destination building is intended to be covered by these accessibility standards.
So it's not just the buildings themselves, but the connective tissue of urban life, the whole system.
Exactly, the whole system.
And when do these requirements actually kick in? You mentioned new construction and renovation, but what are the specific application rules outlined in Rule 1, Section 4?
Okay, for public and private buildings and related structures for public use that are newly constructed, repaired, or renovated,
Yeah.
basically, no permit will be granted unless barrier-free facilities are provided.
No permit without accessibility.
Right. This includes mandatory features at the space where the primary function is served and where facilities and ingress of the building or structure are located. So, key points of use and entry-exit.
Makes sense.
There's a specific waiver condition, though. If the primary function can already be served at an accessible ingress level, and that level has the necessary facilities, a waiver might be possible.
Okay, avoids redundancy.
Exactly. It aims for smart, efficient compliance. Now, for government-owned living accommodations, there's a precise calculation given.
Ah, yes, the percentages. How does that work?
10%. 10% of the total number of units should be accessible and fully usable by the disabled persons. And here's the calculation part. With any fractional part in excess of 1/2, 12, in the computation thereof, to be considered as one unit.
Okay, can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you have 15 units. 10% of that is 1.5. Since the rule says any fractional part in excess of 1/2, 12, means you round up, you'd need 2 accessible units.
Got it. And if it was 1.4?
If you had 14 units, 10% is 1.4. Since that's not in excess of 1/2, you'd only need 1 accessible unit.
That's a very clear mathematical rule for ensuring a minimum number of accessible units. What about parking?
Yes, accessible slots in parking areas are critical. The rules state they shall be located as near as possible to ingress spaces of the building or structure.
Close to the entrance exit, basically.
Right, for convenience and ease of transfer. Now, for existing buildings and structures to be repaired or renovated, including those proposed for a change of occupancy, barrier-free facilities and accessibility features are required if feasible.
If feasible. That sounds like there are conditions.
There are. Feasibility is determined by a strict set of conditions. For instance, the repair or renovation work must specifically be done in the space where the primary function is served.
Right.
Or facilities can be made accessible by means of an elevator, and the IRR even specifies a minimum elevator car width of 800 millimeter.
So an accessible lift is a key factor.
It can be. Crucially, the space allotted for the primary function must not be diminished by more than 10% of its original area.
So you can't just shrink the main space to add accessibility features.
Correct. And the capacity or strength of any major structural component, think slabs, beams, columns, must not be diminished either.
So they're not asking for structural compromises just for the sake of accessibility. That seems like a smart balance.
Exactly. It's about integrating accessibility without undermining the building's integrity. Additionally, the cost of such repair or renovation work, excluding specific exceptions, must be in excess of 20% of the total cost of the building or structure.
Yeah. Ah, so it applies during substantial renovations, not minor fixes.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
And there must be no legal constraints preventing compliance. But there's an important exception here.
Okay.
Repair or renovation work, which consists only of, say, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems, HVAC, or those required only for fire, panic, and explosion safety for existing spaces.
Like installing sprinklers.
Right. Those kinds of specialized safety upgrades are not subject to these barrier-free requirements on their own.
I see.
This really demonstrates a clear balance between the ideal of full accessibility and the practical, structural, or cost considerations for existing structures. It ensures improvements are made where it's most impactful and feasible without jeopardizing other critical building functions. It's a really nuanced approach.
That is a really nuanced approach. Moving to the nuts and bolts of design, the law delves into anthropometrics and dimensional data as guides for design. This sounds like the technical side of making spaces truly inclusive. What exactly do designers need to consider here?
Yeah, Rule 2, Section 1.2 lays this out in detail. It's about the human body and how it interacts with space. The design must consider human variation.
Meaning.
Specifically, the varying sizes and statures of persons of both sexes, their reaches and their lines of sight at both the standing and sitting positions.
So designers can't just assume a standard person exists.
Exactly. They have to accommodate a wide range of body types and mobility postures. It's about making sure that a light switch, for example, isn't too high for someone in a wheelchair or too low for someone standing tall. It needs to work for everyone.
Simple example, but it makes the point.
It does. The document also emphasizes considering the dimensional data of the technical aids of disabled persons.
Like wheelchairs, crutches.
Precisely. This includes specific dimensions for wheelchair the IR mentions width from 0.60 meters to 0.75 meters, length 1.30 meters. It also covers minimum spaces needed for locking and unlocking leg braces, plus the range of distance needed for crutches and other walking aids.
Getting really specific.
Very. And what's fascinating here is how the document explicitly states that by applying at this very early stage dimensional criteria, which take into account wheelchair usage, the physical environment will ultimately encourage and enable wheelchair users to make full use of their physical surroundings.
So designing it in from the start is key, not adding it on later.
That proactive, integrated design approach is absolutely key. It also specifies that the provision of adequate space for wheelchair maneuvering generally ensures adequate space for disabled persons equipped with other technical aids or accompanied by assistance. So designing for wheelchairs often helps others too.
That's a powerful statement about the ripple effect of thoughtful design.
Indeed. And here's a crucial specific detail for designers. A circle of 1.5 meter in diameter is a suitable guide in the planning of wheelchair turning spaces.
1.5 meters, that's the magic number for turning.
It's the standard guide, yes. Furthermore, the comfortable reach of persons confined to wheelchairs is from 0.70 meters to 1.2 eurometers above the floor, and not less than 0.4 eurometers from room corners.
Reach zones.
Exactly. And for under-table clearance, the comfortable clearance for knee and leg space under tables for wheelchair users is 0.70 meters. Counter height must also be placed at a level comfortable for disabled persons' reach.
These are incredibly specific measurements. How does applying these seemingly small details from the outset make such a big difference?
Well, applying these dimensional criteria from the very beginning
Mhm.
ensures that spaces are inherently barrier-free, rather than trying to, shoehorn accessibility in later. It leads to truly integrated design,
Right.
where wheelchair users aren't just sort of accommodated, but can genuinely make full use of their physical surroundings, as the source says. This foresight saves money and ensures real functionality.
Makes sense.
And what's more, Rule Y, Section 5, also mentions special standards of accessibility. This is interesting.
How so?
It means the law isn't totally rigid. It explicitly allows for other methods and/or materials if better facilities can be provided subject to the approval of the National Council for the Welfare of Disabled Persons.
So there's room for innovation if something better comes along.
Exactly. This demonstrates crucial flexibility and a forward-thinking approach. It allows for innovation and potentially superior solutions beyond the stated minimums, especially as technology and our understanding of accessibility evolve.
That flexibility is critical because technology and understanding of accessibility are always evolving. Okay, now let's move into the really granular details. Specific requirements for different types of buildings. Our sources list 15 architectural features and facilities. They're coded A to O in the document. Could you give us a sense of what those common features are before we dive into the building types?
Of course. These 15 features, outlined in Rule 3, Section 2.1, are basically the building blocks, the common accessibility components referenced throughout the requirements for different building types.
Like a checklist.
Sort of, yeah. They cover everything from how you move through a space to how you use its facilities. We're talking about stairs, walkways, corridors, doors and entrances, washrooms, and toilets.
The essentials.
Right. Lifts, elevators, ramps, parking areas, switches, controls, buzzers, handrails, thresholds, the bumps at doorways, floor finishes, drinking fountains, public telephones, and seating accommodations.
Okay, that's comprehensive.
These form the basic vocabulary for accessibility features within structures.
Got it. Now let's go through the main classifications of buildings. Instead of listing every single feature, A through O, for every subtype, because that would take all day,
It would.
can you give us the general thrust for each category and highlight any particularly unique or maybe surprising requirements?
Certainly. Let's start with Category A residential, government-owned, as outlined in Rule 3, Section 3. For single detached homes and duplexes, the rule is a minimum of 10% of newly constructed units must include barrier-free facilities.
The 10% rule again?
Yes, covering things like accessible stairs, walkways, doors, washrooms, plus ramps, parking, and easily reachable switches. For school or company staff housing, the requirement is generally one accessible unit for every 26 to 50 units constructed, plus an additional unit for every 100 thereafter. The underlying principle here is really to ensure that even within government-provided housing, a baseline of accessible living spaces is always present.
That's a clear percentage for residential buildings. What about Category 2? That covers commercial and industrial buildings, both government and private. This seems like where most public interaction happens.
Absolutely. Category 2, Rule 3, Section 4 is huge. For residential commercial spaces like apartments, condominiums, hotels, and dorms, there's a sliding scale for accessible units, generally one for every 50 units up to 150, with more needed for larger developments.
And hotels specifically.
Critically, for hotels, motels, and similar lodging, elevators, feature F in the list, are explicitly required at the ingress level if there are no other barrier-free options to upper floors. Makes sense given their multi-story nature.
Yeah, definitely. What about places like amusement halls?
Moving to amusement halls and parlors, think arcades, billiard halls, maybe massage parlors mentioned in the source. These facilities require a really extensive set of accessibility features. Almost all 15 we listed, A through O practically.
Wow, almost everything. Why so comprehensive there?
I think it emphasizes that entertainment and leisure activities are considered fundamental rights, accessible to everyone, not just privileges for some.
Good point. What about transport hubs?
For transportation buildings, train stations, bus depots, airport terminals, port facilities, the requirements are consistently comprehensive, again, demanding nearly every feature. This underscores their role as critical gateways to mobility. Seamless access is paramount for the entire journey.
Makes sense. And regular shops, offices.
In retail and commercial spaces like shopping centers, restaurants, office buildings, financial institutions, the law focuses on ensuring that seamless flow from entry to exit, covering essentials like accessible doors, clear corridors, functional restrooms. For specialized facilities like funeral parlors, the requirement is also quite extensive, recognizing their public nature and, well, sensitive function.
Right. What about places like theaters or stadiums?
For theaters, auditoriums, convention halls, and sports complexes, the focus is heavily on accessible seating accommodations, feature O, clear circulation paths, and the essential facilities like restrooms. While they don't always require lifts if ground-level access is well designed, they must ensure that these assembly spaces are truly inclusive for spectators.
That's a detailed breakdown. What about industrial or agricultural buildings? Are their requirements as extensive? I imagine maybe not.
No, generally not as extensive, which aligns with their primary function. For industrial facilities like factories or workshops, the law requires the basics: accessible stairs, walkways, doors, washrooms, along with ramps, parking, and easily reachable controls. The list is slightly reduced compared to public-facing commercial spaces.
Because the main use is different.
Exactly. Recognizing their primary function is industrial work, not public congregation. Similarly, agricultural buildings require a more limited but still essential set of features, prioritizing basic movement and safety for those who work there or might visit.
And Category V?
Category V ancillary buildings are briefly mentioned in the source, but without specific feature lists provided, which suggests a more contextual application based on the specific ancillary structure.
Okay, so bringing it back to the listener. What does this all mean for you when you walk into a new mall or public building? How do these specific features apply in real-world scenarios based on Section 9?
Right. The application of barrier-free facilities and features in Rule 3, Section 9 clarifies their practical implementation.
Oh.
For instance, graphic signs think the international symbol of access must be bold and conspicuously installed in every access from point of entry to connecting destination.
So clear signage all the way.
Crucial for seamless orientation, especially in big complex buildings. Walkways and corridors require adequate passageway and a comprehensive circulation system integrating both horizontal and vertical access to ingress levels. Basically smooth, wide paths without unexpected dead ends or barriers.
And doors. You mentioned heavy doors earlier.
Yes. Doors leading to or within a building or structure or to any room or space for congregation shall be designed to open easily or accessible from floor or to any point of destination. This directly tackles those heavy, hard-to-open doors that can be frustrating barriers.
What about washrooms and ramps? These are often major pain points, especially in older buildings trying to adapt.
Absolutely critical areas. Washroom and toilets must be accessible and provided with adequate turning space. This directly references that 1.5-meter wheelchair turning radius we discussed, ensuring full maneuverability within the restroom space, not just getting through the door.
Inside this all matters.
Definitely. Elevators, whenever required, must meet specific dimension and control requirements, ensuring they are truly usable by someone in a wheelchair or with other mobility aids. Ramps are specified as means of access to level of change going to entry points and entrances, lobbies influenced by condition of location or use, making sure there are smooth transitions between different floor levels.
And parking.
Parking areas must have sufficient space for the disabled persons to allow easy transfer from car park to ingress levels. This addresses the need for that extra width alongside the vehicle for wheelchair transfers or deploying lifts.
Right, the access aisle.
Exactly. And those smaller but still crucial details are covered too. Switches and controls must be at an accessible height. Handrails must be provided on both sides of ramps for stability. Floor finishes on wheelchair routes must be non-skid, and water fountains must be installed as required at appropriate heights.
It's impressive just how detailed this gets down to the floor finish. And there are also specific calculations for accessible units and seating capacity in assembly places. Right. Rule 3 is Section 7 and 8. Can you explain those?
Yes, the IRR ensures minimum provision through very clear calculations. For instance, in the computation for allocating accessible units and seating capacity, a decimal greater than 0.5 shall be considered as 1 unit. Section 8.
The rounding up rule again.
Right. It's important for ensuring sufficient accessible provisions, rounding up rather than down. Furthermore, the principle states that in all cases, a minimum of one accessible unit shall be provided.
So even tiny places need at least one.
Exactly. It ensures even small establishments contribute. So if you're building a small office with, say, 10 units, and 10% are required to be accessible, that's 1 unit. But if the math worked out to 1.5, it would round up to 2 units.
Got it. And for seating in places like theaters or stadiums?
Yes. For seating for the disabled, in all assembly places where seating accommodation is provided, Section 7, there are precise requirements based on capacity. For a seating capacity of 4 to 50 people, there must be 2 wheelchair seating spaces.
2 spaces minimum, even for small venues.
Yes. For 51 to 300 seats, there must be 4 spaces. For 301 to 500 seats, there must be 6 spaces.
And for larger venues?
When the seating capacity exceeds 500, an additional wheelchair seating space must be provided for each total seating capacity increase of 100 seats.
So it scales up.
It scales up. And what's clever here is that the rules allow for readily removable seats to be installed in these designated wheelchair spaces when they aren't needed for wheelchair users.
Ah, so the space can still be used flexibly.
Exactly. It allows for flexibility without compromising the guaranteed accessibility when needed. This meticulous approach aims to guarantee adequate, designated spaces for persons with disabilities in public gatherings.
That's a really comprehensive overview of fixed structures. Now let's transition to the dynamic world of public transportation. How does BP 344 ensure mobility when you're on the go?
Okay, so Rule 4 outlines the requirements for public transportation. Section 1 classifies the modes of transport covered.
Which are?
First, land transportation, Section 1.1. This covers buses, and it even specifies minimum seating capacities, like 50 persons for regular buses and 40 for air-conditioned ones, and also jeepneys.
Buses and jeepneys, got it.
Second, rail transportation, Section 1.2. This covers the main railway systems mentioned in the source. The Philippine National Railways, PNR, the Panay Railways Corporation, PRC, and the Light Rail Transit Authority, LRTA.
Okay, the train systems.
Third, water transportation, Section 1.3, which refers to domestic passenger ships, ferry boats, and other water vessels.
Inter-island travel.
Exactly. And fourth, air transportation, Section 1.4, referring to domestic passenger airplanes. So it covers essentially all common modes of public transit within the country.
That's incredibly extensive. What are the general requirements for these vehicles? Do they all have to be accessible immediately?
Well, the law is very strict regarding permits. Section 2 states, no franchise or permit to operate public transportation units shall be granted, issued, or renewed unless such units are constructed or renovated in accordance with the requirements.
Wow, okay. So accessibility is literally a condition for getting or keeping your operating license.
That's the intent. It gives the law real teeth. For existing public transport vehicles, Section 4, the minimum accessibility requirements also apply to all units, including those being repaired and renovated, so they're expected to upgrade over time.
Good, and making people aware.
Yes. Section 5 requires that Posters or stickers shall be conspicuously displayed inside the units to inform passengers about their rights and the available accommodations.
That helps ensure everyone is aware of the provisions.
Wow.
What about designated seats? Those are often a point of contention among passengers sometimes.
Yes, designated seats, they are a key element covered in Section 6, and the IRR provides very specific rules to manage their use, probably anticipating that friction.
Okay, lay it out for us. How many seats and where?
For regular buses, there must be at least 5 designated seats for disabled persons near exit entrance doors. For first class, premier, and air-conditioned buses, it's at least 4 seats near the door. For passenger trains, at least 6 designated seats per car nearest to the door. For passenger airplanes, at least 2 designated seats near the front exit entrance door per aircraft type.
2 per plane. Oh.
And for jeepneys, there must be at least 2 seats, preferably the front seats, designated for disabled persons.
2 front seats on a jeepney. That's clear. Now, the tricky part, the rules for other passengers using these seats, that's usually where the confusion or arguments happen.
Right. The source is actually very clear on this, likely for that exact reason. For regular and air-conditioned city buses, Section 6.5.
Daily commute buses.
Yes. Other passengers may use these designated seats if they're not occupied, but they must yield them to incoming disabled persons whenever the occasion arises. No questions asked, basically.
Yield on demand. Okay, what about longer trips?
For provincial buses, regular and air-conditioned, passenger trains, and airplanes, Section 6.6, the rule is slightly different. The designated seats may be occupied by other passengers only if no disabled person shall occupy these seats at the start of the trip.
So if a PWD needs it from the beginning, it's theirs. Otherwise, someone else might use it for the whole trip.
That seems to be the distinction, yes. Important for longer journeys where you can't just easily move mid-trip. And for jeepneys, Section 6.8, other passengers may use the designated front seats if unoccupied, but must yield them to an incoming disabled passenger only if the yielding passenger can still be accommodated at the back.
Interesting condition for jeepneys, only if there's other space.
Yeah, it acknowledges the often crowded nature of jeepneys. It tries to ensure the accessible seats are prioritized while allowing some flexibility, hopefully minimizing potential conflict.
That clarifies the protocol considerably. What about domestic shipping? You mentioned ferries and ships. Are there specific rules for embarking and disembarking? That can be particularly challenging on a moving dock or with gangways.
Yes, absolutely. For domestic shipping, Section 6.9, the rules are quite thoughtful. Each vessel must allocate on a per-class basis areas for disabled passengers, specifically nearest to the entrance and/or exit doorways, Section 6.9a.
Okay, designated areas near doors.
But what's particularly considered here is the protocol for embarkation and disembarkation. Disabled passengers are given priority through the assignment of time windows, Section 6.9b.
Time windows, how does that work?
They get a 20-minute period to embark ahead of the 3-hour embarkation time prior to the ship's departure.
So they get on first, with more time.
Yes. And they are allocated a maximum of one hour for disembarkation after the ship's arrival.
And extra time to get off safely.
Exactly.
Right.
This ensures a less stressful and safer boarding and exiting experience, really accounting for the unique challenges of sea travel ramps, gangways, stability. The rules also mention requirements for gangways, galleys, safety equipment, and bunks berths cabins to conform to accessibility standards. Section 9.
That's a really thoughtful provision for sea travel. It's not just about getting on, but getting on safely and with dignity.
Absolutely. That seems to be the core intent. Finally, for identification, the designated seats shall be identified by the International Symbol of Access, Section 7, making them easy to spot.
The familiar blue wheelchair symbol.
Right. And one more thing for buses. Owners or operators of city buses operating in highly urbanized cities shall install in their units audiovisual announcements. Section 8.
Like announcing the next stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crucial for passengers with visual or hearing impairments, ensuring they know where they are and what stops are coming up. When you connect all these granular details to the actual experience of a person with a disability trying to travel, you see these rules really aim to overcome a whole range of challenges, from finding a seat to safely boarding a ship to knowing when to get off the bus. It's about making travel far more inclusive and independent.
Okay, we have the rules for buildings, streets, transport. But how is all this enforced? So what does this all mean for accountability? This is where the teeth of the law truly come in, right?
Absolutely. Rule V, Section 1 details the responsibility for administration and enforcement, and it involves a crucial multi-agency approach. It's not just one office.
Makes sense, given the scope. Who's in charge of buildings and streets?
The Department of Public Works and Highways, DPWH, is primarily responsible for that. Specifically, enforcement happens through the city or municipal engineer, who also acts as the local building official, Section 1.1.
So your local building official is a key player.
They are. They administer and enforce the provisions for buildings, related structures, public transport terminals, streets, and highways. They're the ones checking blueprints and issuing permits based on compliance.
Okay, so construction and infrastructure are primarily under DPWH locally. What about transportation, which involves so many different modes and agencies?
Right, for transportation, the Secretary of Transportation and Communication, DOTC, is the overall administrator, but they work through various line and attached agencies, Section 1.2. It's broken down.
Okay, like who?
For road transport, the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board, LTFRB, handles the issuance of those certificates of public convenience or permits to operate for buses, jeepneys, etc. Section 1.2.1.
So they check for accessibility before giving out franchises.
That's the idea. And the Land Transportation Office, LTO, is responsible for registering the actual vehicles, the buses and jeepneys, and enforcing related land transport regulations, Section 1.2.2. So if a bus isn't accessible, the LTO might be involved in its registration status.
LTFRB for the route franchise, LTO for the vehicle itself. Got it. What about trains?
For rail, the Philippine National Railways, PNR, and the Light Rail Transit Authority, LRTA, are directly responsible for the operation of their passenger trains, including the stations and terminals, Section 1.2.3. So they have direct oversight over their own accessibility compliance.
Okay, self-policing to an extent, water travel.
For water transportation, the Maritime Industry Authority, MARINA, regulates the vessels, the shipping lines, the shipyards, and issues licenses, Section 1.2.4. And the Philippine Ports Authority, PPA, is responsible for the development, maintenance, and operation of the ports themselves and their facilities, Section 1.2.5, ensuring accessible port infrastructure.
So marina for the ships, PPA for the docks. Makes sense. And air travel.
For air transportation, the Civil Aeronautics Board, CAB, supervises and regulates the air carriers, travel agents, and issues certificates and licenses to aircraft, Section 1.2.6. And the Air Transportation Office, ATO, handles the maintenance, operation, and development of most government airports and air navigation facilities, Section 1.2.7.
Most airports.
Yes. The source notes an exception for major international ones like NAIA and MACTAN, which presumably have their own authorities, but ATO covers the rest. This whole multi-agency approach is absolutely necessary for comprehensive enforcement across such diverse sectors. It aims to ensure no area of public life is left unaddressed.
That's a complex web of responsibility, but it seems necessary. Now, what happens if someone or an entity fails to comply? What are the criminal liability consequences outlined in the law? This is the real enforcement part.
Right. The penalties are stipulated in Section 46 of RA 7277, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, Rule V, Section 2, and they are quite severe. It's clear this isn't just a suggestion.
Okay, how severe?
For a first violation, any person who violates any provision of these rules faces a fine of not less than P50,000, but not exceeding P100,000.
50 to 100,000 pesos.
Or imprisonment of not less than 6 months, but not more than 2 years, or potentially both, at the discretion of the court, Section 2 Title 8.1.
Okay, that's significant for a first offense. What about repeat offenders?
For any subsequent violation, the penalties significantly increase. A fine not less than P100,000, but not exceeding P200,000.
Double the fine range.
Or imprisonment for not less than 2 years, but not more than 6 years, or again, potentially both, Section 2 Title 8.2.
Those are substantial penalties, clearly indicating the seriousness. It's definitely not just a slap on the wrist.
They are not. The law also specifically addresses the abuse of privileges granted by the Act.
Like someone faking a disability to use accessible parking.
Potentially, yes, or abusing designated seats, perhaps. Any person found abusing these privileges faces imprisonment of at least 6 months or a fine of at least P50,000, or both, Section 2B.
Okay. And what if it's a company violating the rules, not an individual?
If the violator is a corporation, organization, or any similar entity, the law says the officials thereof directly involved shall be held liable, Section 2C.
So managers or executives can be personally liable.
That's the implication. It ensures responsibility trickles up to leadership, not just staying with, say, a single employee. And there's a very strict consequence mentioned for non-citizens. If the violator is an alien or a foreigner, they shall be deported immediately after service of sentence without further deportation proceedings. Section 2D.
Wow. Deportation. That's a very clear deterrent. Who exactly are the persons, individuals liable for violation, the source lists specific roles, right?
Yes, the list is quite comprehensive, aiming to cover all key stakeholders in the chain of responsibility. For buildings establishment structures, those liable include the owner or operator of the building, the contractor who built or renovated it, the architect who designed it, the engineer involved, and crucially, any building official or other public official in charge with issuing building permits, registration, certification, or inspection.
So multiple parties involved in design, construction, and oversight can be held accountable, not just the owner.
Correct. It spreads the responsibility.
Yeah.
For air, land, and sea transportation, the individuals liable include the owner-operator of the public transportation service, the bodybuilders who construct the vehicles like buses or jeepneys, safety officers, engineering staff, and managers within the transport company.
Okay, management and technical staff.
Yes. And interestingly, the drivers, conductors, and conductresses who operate the vehicles daily can also be held liable.
The frontline staff, too.
Yes. And just like with buildings, public officials in charge with the issuance of permits, registration, certification, and inspection of public transportation are also on the hook.
That covers almost everyone involved.
It does. The severity of these penalties and this broad range of individuals and entities that can be held accountable from the ground level operator right up to the certifying official are clearly in place to ensure serious commitment to accessibility and to strongly deter noncompliance.
It sends a very clear message.
It does. And just for context, the rules state they officially took effect 30 days after the date of publication in the Official Gazette. The source also notes the coordination by the National Council for the Welfare of Disabled Persons, signed by their chairman, highlighting the collaborative effort behind making this vital legislation work.
Wow, that was truly a deep dive into Batas Pambansa Bilang 344 and its implementing rules and regulations. We've unpacked, well, basically everything, from the fundamental purpose and the UN-linked philosophical principles of accessibility.
Right, the accessibility, reachability, usability.
Exactly. To the detailed categories of disabled persons it covers, the extensive scope of where this law applies, buildings, streets, buses, trains, ships, planes, you name it.
Even public phones got a mention.
They did. And the precise anthropometric data guiding design those measurements for reach, turning space, then the specific requirements for various building classifications and the really detailed rules for public transport vehicles, down to the number of designated seats and boarding times for ships.
And finally, the stringent enforcement mechanisms, the roles of all those different agencies like DPWH, LTO, Marina.
And those significant criminal liabilities for noncompliance. It's incredibly comprehensive.
It really is. And it's clear that legislation like BP 344 isn't just some dusty legal document sitting on a shelf. It's intended as a living, breathing framework that profoundly shapes our physical world. It's meticulous detail, covering everything from minimum ramp widths and turning spaces in restrooms to designated seating on jeepneys and those specific time windows for boarding ships. It's a testament to the comprehensive effort required to ensure mobility, participation, and, importantly, dignity for millions of persons with disabilities.
It really highlights that accessibility requires attention to so many small details.
Absolutely. And continued awareness and diligent implementation of these rules are essential for the law to truly enhance lives and fulfill its promise of a barrier-free environment. It needs constant vigilance.
Absolutely. So, as you navigate your daily life now, maybe the next time you encounter a ramp where there might have just been stairs before, or you see a wide doorway, or notice really clear signage, how might a greater awareness of laws like BP 344 change your perspective on the spaces you inhabit?
Makes you look at things differently.
Yeah, and perhaps how might it inspire you, just to look for opportunities, however small, to make the world around you even more accessible and inclusive for everyone, something to think about.
Definitely something to think about.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep making the world a more welcoming place. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.